Welcome everyone to QB Power Hour. Today is February 1st, 2018. And today's episode is QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online Conversion Checklist. And today's episode is approved for ACE, Advanced Education Credits. The agenda for today will speak briefly about QB Power Hour, the sponsors and the host. We'll talk about the CPE and ACE process, and then we'll spend most of the episode talking about the QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online checklist. I'm going to try to do this all in 1 hour, but I have a strong feeling that I have so much content here that we may go a little over. However, we'll make it so the folks that have to leave at top of the hour, they can answer the polling questions, they can get everything done, but we want to cover a lot of ground. And so this is going to be a jam-packed session on converting from desktop to QuickBooks Online. About QB Power Hour, we're a webinar series, usually about twice a month, every other Thursday. Next episode is actually next Thursday, so it's exactly a week from now, and we're going to talk about sales tax for QuickBooks Desktop. We were supposed to do sales tax today, and then we moved it because we wanted to kind of move some topics around. So we're going to do sales tax next week. Then 2 weeks later, we're doing Apps Power Hour episode 3 with guest host Heather Satterley. Then on March 1st, we're going to do QuickBooks Online Inventory Management, and that one's also going to be an ACE and Advanced Continuing Education credit course. And then on March 22nd, we'll have QuickBooks Desktop Remote Access and QBox. QBox is sponsoring the episode, and we're also going to demo their software. Michelle Long is now with us today. She's doing a training, I believe. She's traveling. Check out her books in Amazon. She's an author of 5 books. She has a huge group in LinkedIn. There's the link. Over 160,000 members to the Successful QuickBooks Consultants group in LinkedIn, I believe it's called. Myself, my name is Hector Garcia. I live in the Miami area. We teach QuickBooks in our own classroom. There's my email. There's my Twitter. If you want to contact me, I'm usually pretty good at responding emails. Now, we want to thank our sponsors, T-Sheets, the #1 rated app in apps.com, helps you create, manage, and approve timesheets from any device, completely integratable with QuickBooks. Go to tsheets.com/pros if you're an accounting professional to get a free account for your firm. Arrow Workflow, it's a great workflow app. We use it in our firm. It's used to manage tasks, deadlines, all your workflow inside your firm. It is designed by a QuickBooks Pro Advisor, by my friend Laura Redmond, and she's got a great team of other Pro Advisors as well, like Victoria and them. So go to arrowworkflow.com to check them out, do a free trial. Great workflow application. And HubDoc is pretty much the most popular document aggregator for QuickBooks Power users. They can download statements, they can download receipts automatically. If you're an accounting professional, you get a free account by going into hubdoc.com/powerhour. And we have a new sponsor. We'd like to welcome our new sponsor, Avalara, who is the leader in sales tax compliance and automation. They have apps that integrate with shopping carts, e-commerce channels, and of course, QuickBooks. Check them out at avalara.com. Avalara is also sponsoring next week's episode. They're sponsoring this episode and next week's episode. So really like to thank Avalara for today's episode, because there was a lot of work to put this one together. And next week's, we'll talk about sales tax, and we'll also talk about the Avalara software called TrustFile that helps you with tax compliance. About the CPE process, to get your CPEs, you have to be logged in for at least 50 minutes. We're going to give you a 4 polling questions. So this says, so all you have to do is answer 3 of the polling questions, and certificates will be emailed in about 4 weeks. Give me about a month. And I emailed every single certificate I was pending yesterday. So if check your email today, if you're missing some, make all your new requests as of today. But I think I caught up to yesterday. And this episode is approved for ACE. Now, what is ACE? ACE is the required continuing education credits for advanced QuickBooks Pro Advisor. If you're not an advanced QuickBooks Pro Advisor, you probably don't care. Okay, so about this episode, we're not going to do any actual QuickBooks training. We're not going to show any actual conversions. We're going to provide I'm going to provide a theoretical framework to how you should approach conversions, and convince you that conversions from desktop to online should be treated as high value consulting engagement. So that will be kind of my point, is to try to show you why I see desktop to online as a high conversion engagement. Now I'm going to walk you through 50 items or checkpoints that I use to go through the conversion and to set the correct expectation with the client up front, and hopefully we can charge our worth when we're doing these type of conversions. Now, if you're interested on a video that actually shows you the conversion piece, there's a link there in which you can unless you can watch the video. It's a quick 10-minute video I did to show you the actual conversion process. Okay, so this is overall what a complete QB to desktop conversion engagement would look like if it's done correct, complete from beginning to end. And this is how I approach it. So from this point forward, just pay really close attention to all the details, please, because we're going to go pretty fast. First thing you need to do is do an in-depth review of the current QuickBooks desktop file. You need to plan for any changes to be made prior to conversion. I would not recommend converting garbage and then trying to clean up the garbage in QuickBooks desktop. You may also want to do some cleanup or deleting some information, so you don't have to, you don't get overage of items or customers or accounts that you don't want. So there may be a desire to just pick a particular subset of data before you do the conversion. The other really important piece is you want to list out, you want to give your client a document, you want to give your client a list of your findings that says, these are all the things that you're going to lose when you go to QuickBooks Online, and these are the significant changes in your workflow that you're going to have, and we may have to build some workarounds, and you have to set that expectation up front. Trust me, it takes care of a lot of potential customer service issues and customer getting frustrated about not understanding what they're getting or what pretty much what they're getting into. Then after you do the conversion, you want to check for discrepancies in your trial balance, in your balance sheet. You want to make sure that your historical financial information matches. In some cases, you'll be making adjustments, journal entries, and stuff like that to make your historical information to work. So that's another piece of work that you may have to do on the conversion. Then after you do all that, then you're gonna have to spend some time modifying the list, cleaning up the list in QBO, working on templates, building the templates, invoice templates, that sort of thing for your client, and also customize the preferences. In some cases, you may have to integrate data with other apps to share data, or a third-party app that takes care of a significant function of the business. And then lastly, you have to train, educate your clients, and support them as they're going to have major workflow changes and major hiccups because they're used to working a very specific way, and it's going to change, right? So that's a really important piece. So that's in a nutshell what the conversion will look like. Now, I recommend that you download my 50-point checklist. The link is right there on the screen, and this is what the link looks like. So this is in my page, and hopefully you can see my page right now on the screen. And in the chat box, I put the link if you want to click on it. So there's the video I was telling you about that walks you through the conversion, and then there's the 50 points, and I'm going to go through all of them today. And there's also some information there about what the service includes, what doesn't include. I actually use this page to route my leads, the clients that want me to do a conversion, and say, hey, read this because that's what we're going to do. Okay, that's exactly what we're going to do. So make sure that that you know what the process looks like. There's also a whole bunch of links I added here that contain an actual step-by-step process on how to do the conversion. There's a link to the Intuit website that tells you exactly what the import limitations are. It actually tells you area by area what you're going to lose after the conversion. And then it tells you here what is not imported in QuickBooks Online. And it actually tells you what doesn't import, custom reports, audit trail, certain inventory type of transactions, reconciliation reports, progress invoicing. So all these links here, which are in this article, so I think this article will basically be the mother lode of everything, contain that. And it also contains a printable checklist, which is the one that I use when I sit with my clients, a 2-page checklist where I pretty much say, look, this is everything that we're going to run through. And it also contains an Excel file that I'm making available to you. Let me share that Excel file real quick, and that should be in the handouts, and it should also be inside that link. The Excel file I'm about to show you contains the 50 points, and then it contains some fields that are designed for you to put notes next to each of these points, right? As you're reviewing the QuickBooks desktop file, you want to write all your findings per point, and you also want to put in these 4 boxes. One says QBES, one says Pro Prem, one says Essentials, one says Plus, what I want you to put is I want you to put an X next to the one that you feel is the best solution for the client based on that specific feature that they're using, and then put your notes. And at the end, you pretty much want to weigh in, whether because one of the things that we try to achieve in our conversion is not just doing the conversion, it's making an actual recommendation on whether or not the conversion is good for them. Okay, I don't take the approach that all conversions are necessary and then that all conversions need to be done. As a matter of fact, many a times our recommendation to our client ends up being, hey, our findings are telling us that you shouldn't convert, that you're going to lose too much, that it's going to be a consternation in your business, that there's going to be a lot of workflow changes, so you may go through some frustration at the beginning, and the client may say, nope, I want to convert. I want to convert no matter what. I won't listen to your advice, but they still want to hire me to do the conversion. At least I feel that I did a pretty much in-depth review, and I gave him the checklist. I mean, all that stuff was available. So that's what I do, because I feel that expectation is it's everything. Now let's talk about the specific services that are related to a QuickBooks Desktop to QBO conversion. Again, I'm circling back to why I think this is a high value engagement. This is not just a conversion, call it conversion, and that's it. An implementation engagement is high value. Some of the things that you do, one of them is you're reviewing the QuickBooks file by itself. That's a whole job, like if the client has errors in their accounting, if the client, it's missing information, doesn't have enough transactions, banks are not reconciled, all that stuff. That's a whole review process. Then making the adjustments to clean that up. That's another job. Then giving the client a report of what they will lose and the limitations compared to desktop based on their specific need. That's another job. That's another project by itself. Recommending potential apps, not a specific app, potential apps, that's another job by itself. Cleaning up the list, condensing the data pre-conversion, that's another job. That could be a huge job. Cleaning up the list after conversion, customizing templates, re-reconciling some of the bank accounts because some of the reconciliations don't come through, connecting the bank accounts, that's another job. Redesigning processes and workarounds is another job, and train and support use is another job. So when you give somebody a price for a conversion, I would actually itemize all of these as all different jobs, all different projects. That way, when you give them a price like $1,500 or $2,000, something that maybe they're not expecting to pay, because if they call Intuit will help them with the conversion, but they won't do any of this stuff, right? They'll press the button, but they won't do any of this stuff. This is the stuff that's valuable. This is the stuff that people have to pay for. So a lot of times I think that if you engage into a conversion engagement and don't go over these details, you can get burnt, because the client's going to assume that it's a 2 clicks, 3 clicks conversion done, and that's not the case. So again, it's a high value consulting advisory service, so then charge for it. Now, I'm going to tell you real quick about the F.O.R.D model of consulting. There's a link on the reference of where I found that, and I think this is going to be extremely valuable for you, because it helps you change the approach on how you do business with your clients. F.O.R.D, it stands for findings, options, recommendation, and decision. Now, when somebody wants to hire you to do anything, you have to say what capacity you want me to work at. Do you want me to just report on what I found, right? Let me just do some research and tell you this is what I found. Or you want me to do that plus give you options, pros and cons, right? Pros and cons of staying in QuickBooks Desktop, pros and cons or going to QuickBooks Online, all that stuff. Then I'm making a specific recommendation, especially if you're recommending an app, or if you are making the recommendation, yes, let's go with the conversion. I'll help you through the process. And finally, decision. Are you going to be working alongside the client, making decisions of what you're going to do about post-conversion issues? So you want to think of these as, like what level of engagement do you really want? If you want, just findings and options, you're going to pay one price. If you want to go with the whole thing, you're going to pay a whole bunch, right? So that's just sort of an important piece about that. Okay, let's see. Okay, so real quick, I want to just tell you about the smile curve, but I'm going to do it really briefly. So the smile curve is the concept that if you take a U or a smile, the two areas where there's most value, it's going to be on the top of the U. So on the top left of the U and the top right of the U. And this is what a project looks like. We start by finding out if going to desktop to online, it's a good choice, and pros and cons, what happens when they convert, what happens with the stay, what their QuickBooks desktop looks like. That is, for the most part, the easy part of the job, and is the highest value. Then when you actually do the conversion, clean up desktop, do the adjustments, clean up the actual list, do the third-party integration, all that stuff in the bottom, it takes the most amount of work and effort, but it's the lowest value. Customers don't really value that piece of the work. Then at the end, when you give them the final product, when you train them on how to use it, when you help them choose the app that works for them, and when you redesign workflows around their new software, that stuff is high value. And again, that takes the least amount of effort. So it's basically an inverse formula where what we do the most, the client values the least, and what we do the least, the client values the most. Right? So it's kind of an interesting concept, and I want to make sure, just want to get your head wrapped around that the conversion piece of the conversion engagement is not what the clients value. It is the pre-analysis and the post support. Okay, so that being said, let's go through specific examples of what the conversion service would look like or should look like, when around this theory, right? So if we get hired to do findings, just findings, then what we'll do is we'll do a report, and we'll review accuracy, completeness, and sufficiency of the current QuickBooks desktop file. We'll give them a report on the opportunities to clean up the desktop file pre-conversion, and then we're going to give them general reports on what the client can expect post-conversion. That could be a service where we're not really doing any conversion work. We're basically providing an assessment of what the desktop file looks like pre-conversion. So that I think, so I think that in itself, it's a service, and that could be an isolated service that you can charge for that separately than anything else. Then we can upgrade to maybe a level 2 service where we do both findings and options, where we do everything we did in service 1, but then we're going to give them a specific report on what they're going to lose post-conversion based on their situation. So, hey, client, you do inventory and you have some assemblies, you're going to lose this, right? You have, you're doing some job costing and you're running a estimates versus actual report, you're going to lose that. You're running a balance sheet, a budget by balance sheet, you're going to lose that on the conversion. You have to redo it. So like reporting on what they specifically on that, what they will lose and what the limitations are, that in itself is a huge service. And then giving the client a proposal of what needs to be done in QuickBooks Desktop to complete it and make it accurate pre-conversion. That's actually part of that service. Like building a proposal takes time. Building a proposal to take it one step further. And this is the true consulting piece of it, which is, how we're going to reduce the file size, how we're going to choose what customers to keep, how we're going to choose what items to keep, how we're going to clean up our lists, how we're going to change the chart of accounts for it to be easier to read, how we're going to change the items to be easier to access. So that would be sort of like a level 2 engagement. And in this engagement, you're not doing any conversion work. This is just review proposal and the potential pros and cons of moving and what would it look like if we do some cleanup work to work together. Or we can go with like a sort of like a level 3 type service where we do all that and clean up the QuickBooks file and reduce the file size and do the conversion and make the adjustments post-conversion and choose a third-party app, re-engineer process and workflows, implement it, customize templates, and truly implement QuickBooks Online post-conversion. That would be a full F.O.R.D consulting engagement where we're going to do all 4 facets of the engagement. So I want you to think about this as maybe, and I don't want to give prices because obviously price is different, but just to give you a general scope, this would be maybe like $250 service. This would be maybe a $500 service. and this would be maybe a $1,500 service. Now, again, I don't want you to get stuck with the dollar amounts. This is what we normally charge, but I just want to get you an idea wrapped around the difference in pricing. Now, the power of language, which is something I kind of threw this slide last minute just because I think it's so important. The word that you use on this is gonna shape the entire engagement. If you say we're upgrading to QuickBooks Online, right? And I'm gonna put online there because I want to make sure that we're specifically talking about online. And this is huge because the word that we use is huge. If we say we're gonna upgrade you to QuickBooks Online, if that's what we're saying, then you are implying that that after everything's going to be better, right? Because it's an upgrade. If you say we're going to downgrade you to QuickBooks Online, then you're also kind of implying that there will be a loss in the process. Now, if you're trying to encourage the movement to QuickBooks Online, you use upgrade. If you're trying to discourage it, you use downgrade. The big question is, what position do you want to take? Because I've had situations where I don't want to convert my client. They just, for whatever reason, discussing with my client, looking at the findings, doing the full in-depth analysis that they paid me to do, it doesn't make sense to convert, and the client still wants to say, okay, sure, we'll help you with the downgrade. And then that sets the mood for what we're doing. So I believe that calling it an upgrade has a huge level of commitment from our part, because we're sort of like, saying that, yeah, this is going to be a better experience once you move. Now, the other words that I like to kind of toy around with, are we doing a conversion to QuickBooks Online? Are we transferring data? Or are we implementing it? I think that if we call it transfer data, transfer transactions, then we're limiting the scope to, hey, we're going to get some stuff from desktop into online. If we're saying converting, we're saying that we're bringing everything over. And if we say implementing, we're bringing everything over plus making sure that it works, right? And again, once you design your services and you design your pricing options, you use the wordings to position them based on what option you're gonna choose. Now, you can tell the client something like, hey, we can do the transfer of data, we can do the conversion, try it for 30 days, don't scrap your QuickBooks Desktop yet, and if you like it, keep it. Or if you say something like, don't worry, we'll make it work, then you're committing yourself, obviously, a lot deeper with the client. And again, not to belabor the point, but the bigger the commitment you make, the bigger you have to charge, because you're going to be spending more time to make right with that client. Somebody says, if you tell the truth, it's always a downgrade. Somebody says, what do you think about the word migrating? I like the word migrating, Marty. I think the word migrating is kind of like conversion. And I think the word migrating also spells out that there's some bumps along the way, right? So I actually like the word migrating. I'm going to agree with you on that. Somebody says, do you think the QBO platform will be superior to QuickBooks Desktop in the distant future and will continue to acquire more third-party companies? James, I don't know if I'm ready to answer that. I would say that there's definitely the mood of Intuit to make the platform better. I mean, I've been to the headquarters. I've talked to the developers. They want to do it. I mean, the intention is there. How long it would take, I'm not sure. I mean, how long it would take, I'm not sure. That I would say that in itself could be a challenge. Yeah, I think so. How hard is it to pick a third-party app? I'm telling you, picking a third-party app, it's high-level stuff, because just picking the third-party app is not really the issue. Here is having the experience with it of all the destruction it could potentially do to your QuickBooks data if you don't understand what integration looks like. So I find it to be that's the most dangerous piece of putting a third-party app. It's not what it can do, it's how it can change your financial information, create invoices, all that craziness. Oh, somebody says I like the word transition. Okay. All right, let me hit close. Yes, I did say, Cindy, I did say destruction. There are some third-party apps that from an accounting perspective, they destroy your file, right? They bring in junk, bring journal entries, bring invoice, bring payments, stuff that takes a long time to clean up. If you ever integrated PayPal the last couple of years with QuickBooks, you know exactly what that means. It's a horrible process. Anyway, so let's go through what the phases look like. So this is what the phases of conversion look like if you are going to engage with an entire conversion process. I'm going to walk you kind of step by step through every one of those items in that checklist. So the first one is, where is the database? Like, it's valuable to know if the database is sitting on one person's computer on a server, how many computers are accessing it at the moment. Are there remote access users? Is there an external accountant working on it? Is there an accountant's copy out? Is there data corruption? Does the data verify? All that first set is just to know where the file is, right? And will you interrupt somebody's workflow doing the conversion? Will you cause potential double data entry while you're doing the conversion? Somebody else is sitting there and creating invoices or estimates and that type of thing. So that's the kind of like the first step, right? And you want to, I think you should, you don't have to follow the same order, but this is my order, so it's up to you. The other one is, what is the current file size or the number of targets? Remember that QuickBooks Online doesn't receive a converted file with more than 350,000 targets. So if you're over 350 targets, you're going to have to do a condense. You're going to have to do a period copy. You're going to have to reduce the file size. And that's a job. That is a job by itself. Because if you have to do a data condense, you're going to lose data. You're going to have bogus journal entries. I mean, there's so many things that are going to come along that are just not going to make you a happy camper after the conversion. So if it's necessary to do a condense, that needs to be a separate job by itself. Okay. Do they have multiple users? It's a really important piece. Do the multiple users have limited access right now? Like, you may not ask this question, convert, and the client will come back and say, oh, what about Steve? He only had access to this. Now he can access everything. It's like, well, that you should have asked that. As a professional QuickBooks conversion person, you should ask that up front. Now, do they do backups? That's a huge one. Like, do you do backups? Because all these people are used to doing backups. But the key question I ask is, can you tell me of a past scenario where you had to restore a backup? And if the client says yes, and they tell you something like, yeah, there was one time that a new employee, Johnny, entered a whole bunch of invoices and the invoices were wrong, and we had to go back and restore the file. Well, you have to set the expectation to know, by the way, that cannot happen in QuickBooks Online. So I normally, if the client's never had the experience, I don't get into it. But if the client has ever restored a backup, I would say yes, definitely bring it up and find out why. Like, if they did it because something went wrong, okay, something went wrong. But if it happened because of something that's a real life scenario, like, hey, a new employee making a mistake. Another piece is multi-currency turned on. Just know right off the bat that multi-currency conversions are messy, especially if you have vendors and customers with foreign currency and running balances. I would possibly not encourage a conversion with multi-currency, because that could be an issue all by itself. Okay, so that's kind of like phase one. I want to just get a general idea for what that file looks like. Phase two, what add-ons and extras are in the desktop file now. Is payroll active? Are they using manual payroll? Are they using enhanced payroll? Are they using assisted payroll? Know and understand that regardless of what payroll they're using, there's going to be some payroll cleanup you have to do in QuickBooks Online. Make sure your year-to-dates are right. Make sure all the accumulations for all the forms are right. Otherwise, your forms are going to be screwed up. And if they have assisted payroll, it's a kind of a bigger issue, because they have an assisted payroll to QuickBooks Online full service payroll conversion team. And that's kind of a mess sometimes. So just kind of be aware that payroll conversion may make things a little bit more complicated. Now, if they're using outside payroll, how are they entering the payroll data now? If they're entering it by hand with journal entries, not a big deal. If they're importing it through an IAF file, just remember, you can't do that anymore with QuickBooks Online. So just set that expectation up front. Is QuickBooks Payments enabled? Because if QuickBooks is enabled, you have to disable any recurring transactions in the Intuit Merchant Center. And once you convert, you can then recreate those automated sales receipts. But if there's credit card information inside of these customers, all that stuff is going to go away. None of the customer's credit card information converts over. So that's also a really important one. Now, is there a third-party app connected to QuickBooks Desktop now? Yes, you want to check that, and if there is, you want to find out if that's also available in QuickBooks Online. I've had situations, honestly, where I'm looking at the QuickBooks file, I didn't see it, I didn't check, I didn't ask. Then I convert, and it turns out that they have one little piece of software that they use to export data from QuickBooks into the bank for ACH file transfers. I forgot what it was, and QuickBooks Online didn't have it, and because I didn't ask, we had a big issue post conversion. Okay, let's see. Phase three. Now, phase three would be the actual QuickBooks Desktop file review, right? You want to check that all the bank's credit cards are reconciled, and you want to write down up to when each month is reconciled, the ending balance, and you want to pull a report of all the uncleared transactions. Usually older than 90 days because you're going to delete those, but you want to write down, because when you convert from QuickBooks Desktop to online, the reconciliations don't come the same way. They just come different. That they come pre-marked. You have to re-reconcile. I don't, just write all those things down, because you may have some beginning balance issues with the post conversion. You don't have to re-reconcile, like check one by one, but you do have to click on reconcile and just do one pass of it to make it work. Now, does the current balance sheet tie to the last tax return or the last audited financial statements? And that's actually a basic accounting, bookkeeping type of review work that we do already. That's not particularly magical. Like, we do that already, whether we're doing a conversion or not. Like, we want to check if the balance sheet tied to the last tax return or the last audited financial statements. You also want to check, are the books closed with the password? Remember that password doesn't transfer over. The closing of the books does, but the password doesn't transfer over. You want to check, are there any transactions on the closed exception report? Also know that those transactions, the log of the closed transactions doesn't transfer either. Are there any old transactions, more than 90 days in the undeposited funds account? You may want to review that too. And again, this review, you're writing these things down, and this is the report that you're going to give to your client pre-conversion, right? Saying, hey, these were my findings. This is what they paid you for, right? These were your findings. This is what they paid you for. So you definitely want to write down all these things, even if it's just a simple yes, no, even if you innately know what you're supposed to do because you already do this already. This is kind of what do they call that? Second nature. First nature or second nature? Second nature, right? Maybe it's just second nature to you to review these things, and you already programmed in your head to look at them. But the idea is that you write them down. That's what the checklist is for. I spent years building that checklist, and I'm making it public to you because I want you to use it. It's going to be useful. Trust me. Trust me. You're going to be emailing me. You're going to be texting me, DMing me, saying that it was wonderful for your engagement. Trust me. It's been wonders for us. Okay, let's go phase 4. So phase 4 is when we talk about more like the accrual and the non-posting transactions, the stuff that's less sort of bank and accounting and the stuff that's more operations. You want to see, are there any other accounts receivable? I would do my write-offs in QuickBooks Desktop before bringing them to online. You want to check if there's any open credit balances in the AR account. It's extremely important that you identify every single customer payment that is unapplied. And it's also important on the AP side, on the accounts payable side, that you identify every single unapplied bill payment, because QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Desktop have a different engine for calculating accrual cash conversions with unapplied payments and unapplied bill payments. So if you know this up front, it may be easy for you to find differences in your P&L and differences in your balance sheet post-conversion. So extremely important that you narrow those down. Now, I have some reports in YouTube. I have some videos in YouTube that show how to do that, or maybe I don't. I'm not sure. Sorry if I don't. But you may want to figure out how to do that. Maybe at some point I'll create a video on how to isolate those with custom reports. Are there any sales orders being used, and how are they being used? Not always sales orders are used for inventory. Sometimes they're used for like work orders or some weird specific things where the clients use them for their workflow. So you may want to ask that. You may want to look at that, review that. Are there any partial purchase orders? So QuickBooks Online supports partial purchase orders now, but they don't convert. So you're not going to convert any partial purchase orders, which is a big problem. Now, phase 5, this is where we review inventory. And of course, if your client doesn't do inventory, you will skip that. But you want to see, are there any open item receipts? This is huge because in QuickBooks, they don't show up as bills, but in QuickBooks Online, they will show up as bills. So you want to clean those up because if you really don't owe the vendor any money, you want to clean those up before. You want to check if there's any non-inventory items set up as double-sided items because you may want to double check that the cost side of those items are hitting the correct accounts, and you maybe want to make that conversion before moving it to QuickBooks Online, so you can pick and choose, whether you want to convert it with it, and retroactively change the financial statements or not. Are they using inventory? Are they using assemblies? A very important one. Are there any inventory items that are inactive that have quantity on hand? Because that is going to be a mess when you bring it over to QuickBooks Online. Are there any inventory parts with negative balances? That's another important piece. QuickBooks Online and QuickBooks Desktop calculate cost of goods sold and inventory valuation different. So the carryover wrong valuation of these inventory parts when they're negative are catastrophic to your inventory and your cost of goods sold. So you want to clean up negative inventory parts before moving to QBO. Make them zero, make them inactive, whatever. Does the inventory valuation report match the inventory asset report? And if it doesn't, you may have to clean up some of these journal entries that are there causing this problem. Do all inventory items map to the inventory asset account? I can't tell you how many times I've had clients where the inventory asset account points to like a bank account, and then they don't understand why there's invoices in the reconciliation reports. And this is just part of the regular QuickBooks Desktop review process. Like I don't think this is like new information per se, but this is something that I think once you have it written down, you'll be more propense to like follow a list or follow a process. Then we're going to review the balance sheet. And one of the typical things that I do is make sure that if there's multiple partners, that every partner has their own equity account. It just makes it better. This is not a problem for post-conversion or anything like that. This is just a regular review. Want to check your other assets, your liabilities. Are these balances correct? Sales tax liability and payroll tax liability, that needs to be accurate. Make sure that that works because payroll tax and sales tax are calculated different in QuickBooks Desktop. Same formula, but they use a different mechanic. So you may have an issue with those. So those are really important on that. Now, phase 7, QuickBooks Desktop, profit and loss chart of accounts and other list. You want to check, are there redundant accounts? Is there an opportunity to merge accounts? Is there an opportunity to redesign the P&L? I had a client that had me create just three parent expense accounts. It was labor, if I remember, it was labor, operations, and sales and marketing. So we had three parent accounts, and then we made everything else a sub account of those three, and it really made the comparative process from month to month, quarter to quarter, super easy to do when you're looking at collapse statements. So that's something that could be an opportunity for you to do that. Remember, the desktop to online conversion is also a huge opportunity to have a fresh start, to clean up, to do things different. It's not just converting and migrating, it's converting and implementing and giving them a better path forward. I mean, that's the most positive thing about converting anyone to QuickBooks Online is that we can bundle up all these other services that they need that maybe they didn't pay us for, but they need in order to have better, cleaner, easier to use books. Another one that I think is a big issue is multiple sales tax items. This right here, it's a problem sometimes because QuickBooks Online right now at the moment, it's a mess with sales tax. They're going through transitions. Multiple sales tax items don't work right. I mean, I would publicly say that I think that Intuit has screwed up temporarily. With QuickBooks Online and sales tax, they got to get that fixed right away. There's been so many complaints, especially with multi-state and multi-item. I think that could be a huge issue. So just make sure you're aware because post-conversion, you may have to recreate those sales tax items. Now, are there any transactions without payees? I mean, that to me is just it's not a problem post conversion, but I find it to be just a big nuance. So I would say, yeah, I would force my client to put the payees or charge the client to fix it. Are there any other names? Remember, in QuickBooks Online, there's no such thing as other names. I mean, in QuickBooks Desktop, we have vendors, employees, customers, and other names. Online is just employees, vendors, and customers. So all the other names are going to show up in the vendor list. And if the client is used to having a small, tight, clean vendor list, they're all of a sudden going to have everything that's under the other names. So you may want to delete those, convert those, whatever, prior to doing the conversion. Now, what about custom fields and custom items? And bank feeds. So is bank feeds connected, right? Because you're gonna have to reconnect it. That's a service, and you should charge for that because it not always works the same way. And you may have to train your client on how to use it because that's very different in online. Are they using the bill payment, direct deposit payment with the bank? Do they pay bills through QuickBooks Desktop? Because that QuickBooks Online doesn't have, so they're gonna lose that. It's important to point that out. Are there estimate sales orders, invoice purchase templates that are customized in a way that QuickBooks Online cannot support? Maybe they're using the customer message list. Maybe they're using ship via. Maybe they're using the delivery date. Maybe they're using a sales rep. All these things are no longer going to be in QuickBooks Online. A sales rep will come in as a custom field. Are there any custom fields being used? You're going to lose every custom field in QuickBooks Desktop once you convert. You're going to lose all custom fields. Sales reps are going to come in as one of your custom fields, but all your other custom fields, you're going to lose. Are there any memorized reports that management uses? Any customized reports management uses, specifically with summary reports, custom summary reports that QuickBooks Online doesn't have? Are they using customer type, vendor type, job status? Are they using any of these drop downs for reporting purposes? Because you're going to lose all that once you go to QuickBooks Online. And again, this is not to be a pessimist. This is, our service includes an in-depth report of what you're going to lose. And that sets the expectation. Because if you tell them you're going to lose 30 things and you want to convert anyway, they can't come back and complain that something went wrong with the conversion because something didn't come over. We told you it wasn't going to come over. That was the premise of the whole thing, is that you're paying us to tell you what's not going to come over, and we can't control this, right? And then, of course, that's when we call it a downgrade. I'll talk about the good parts, in a little bit. I know this sounds like I'm knocking down QBO. I'm not. I build a checklist because I want to do great QBO conversions, but I want to also pick them, and I want to choose the ones, and I want to do the ones that are going to be a positive experience. Price levels, those don't transfer over. Budgets, only the P&L budget transfers over. The budget by class does not. The budget by job does not, and the balance sheet budget does not. Are there multiple shipping addresses for customers? That does not come over. Is the client using tasks and notes? I can't tell you. Last conversion that we did it really fast, and we skipped this piece. We didn't ask the client, or we asked the client said, no, we don't use the notes. And then literally 2 days after the conversion, they're like, where are my notes? It's like, you told us you don't use them. Oh, well, I didn't know what you meant. Are documents attachments being used? Those don't convert over. So that's another important piece. You're not going to get document attachments converted over. Are they using the finance charge feature in QuickBooks Desktop? That does not come into QuickBooks Online. That doesn't exist in QuickBooks Online. Do they have grouped items? Do they have group sales tax items? Make sure that you let them know that group item grouping and group sales tax items are a problem, and you may have to recreate those in QuickBooks Online. Are they using progress invoicing or the estimates versus actual report? And if they are, make sure you point out you're gonna lose that. Are they using the fixed item list? I have some clients that use it and they love it. They have an inventory of all their fixed assets in there. Well, they're gonna lose that over. That's not gonna come over. And are there any recurring or memorized transactions? Again, make sure that you know that you have to recreate those in QuickBooks Desktop. Okay. All right, phase 11, findings. So this is where we're going to list all the areas that the client is using in QuickBooks Desktop, how they're using it, and the deficiencies of their accounting and the potential changes. So this is phase 11. The first 10 phases was the entire review. This is where we actually document everything. Phase 12, This is where we give options for QuickBooks Desktop. We can tell the client, hey, you can stay with desktop. You can move to enterprise. We can move desktop to the cloud. Is it worth it? Is it not worth it to stay in desktop? What would be some of the potential third-party apps that can solve your issue? Never do a recommendation or a specific app unless you're being paid to do that. Just say, hey, these are the 3 that do inventory. These are the 3 that do job costing, that sort of thing. Also give the client an option to work in parallel. That means we keep desktop while we're online for 30 days, for 60 days, just in case something goes wrong. We still have and remember, the client now is going to work double. You're going to work double if you're going to have double accounting pretty much. That's another option you want to give to the client once you're presenting options. And then lastly, we have the recommendation, right? You're going to learn about the apps. You're gonna inquire about workflows. Hold on a second. Again, you can tell that I did this in January. It's been an insane month for us. So we're gonna learn about all the apps, inquire about the workflow and features. We may have to even go out and test some of these apps ourselves if we're gonna get to that point where we're recommending apps. Or making the assessment, hey, there's no need for an app. We're going to develop workarounds, right? Because that's a huge assessment to make, to tell the client that QBO will be everything the desktop without any apps. Then we do the actual the decision to convert. We make the conversion. We make adjustments during the conversion. We do the cleanup based on what the client obviously is paying us to do. And finally, the last piece is we're going to train and support our clients during the transition, build custom reports, and decide on when to use or stop using the parallel system if we're using QuickBooks Online at the same time. We talked earlier about when the file size is too big, or maybe when the client wants to reduce the file size. In QuickBooks Desktop, you have an option called data condense or period copy. I'm personally a bigger fan of period copy. It just requires a lot more work. But the condensed data works well. Like if the client is okay with converting or migrating to QuickBooks Online, but maybe only bringing 1 year's worth of transactions, so you can do a condense instead of a period copy. But I like the period copy because I think it's the cleanest option. Now, when you do the condense, it will ask you, do you want to do a summary journal entry for the beginning balances? Don't do a summary. Or do a summary per month. Never do a summary per month. That's a mess. So either do one summary, which is the first option, or don't create summary and remove all the transactions regardless of the status. The problem of not doing the summary is that you have to re-enter the balance sheet in a journal entry. So that's really up to you which way you want to go. Now, what I love about the data condense, or what I love about the period copy, is that after you're done, QuickBooks will automatically remove everything that you haven't used during that period. So let me give you an example of how I use this. And I'm going to give you, and if you didn't know this is going to blow your mind. And this one thing may be worth the entire hour you were here. So I had one client in which we were looking at their QuickBooks Desktop. We were reviewing their QuickBooks Desktop. And okay, wait, hold on. Let me just answer a question. Somebody says you didn't mention converting from Enterprise to QuickBooks Online. So I'll make a statement that I hardly ever engage in that. Like if the client has QuickBooks Enterprise, I try as much as possible to keep him in Enterprise for so many reasons. I mean, one, I'm a QuickBooks Enterprise reseller and a QuickBooks Enterprise fanboy. So I have my own personal reasons why I don't want people to move out of Enterprise. And the other piece is, it is much more likely for those lists to be bigger, for the needs to be more complex, and it's going to be much more likely for their experience on the conversion to be negative. So that's my spiel on QuickBooks Enterprise. But that being said, I think that you can do the same process. I think you can do the same process that you do in QuickBooks Enterprise and QuickBooks Online when it comes to doing the review. So I think none of the faces change, just maybe the actual buttons that you press to do the conversion, those could change. So we were talking about, okay, so I was saying that was pretty much anticlimactic. I was saying the one tip that I will give you that I think will be worth the entire hour here is one client that at the end of the day, we we decided that we did want to convert to QuickBooks Online. We decided, yes, we want to convert to QuickBooks Online, but we don't want to bring any transactions. But the client told me, I want you to bring only the customers, vendors, and items that I have used in the last 2 years. Now, if I were to do that manually, I would have to pull a whole bunch of reports in in Excel. I would have to clean stuff up. I would have to do VLOOKUPs. I have to do all this crazy stuff to do it. What I did was I did a data, not a condensed, I did a period copy of the last 2 years, and I selected the option to remove all the list entries. Then I exported the vendors, the customers, and the items as an IIF file. I started a brand new QuickBooks file from zero, imported that list, and then converted a blank QuickBooks desktop file that only contained those customers, vendors, items, and accounts that were used on the last 2 years. So I hope that maybe I explained it correctly, and if not, maybe on the recording you'll see it. So again, my client only wanted account, customer, vendors, and items that were used in the last 2 years. They didn't want to bring any old data. I did a period copy. So I did a period copy where I picked the last 2 years. Then I exported the list to all the list to IIF, the vendors, the customers, the items, and the accounts. I created a brand new QuickBooks file from zero, imported those, and then did the conversion from there. Okay? So no history. And then basically I just went in there and one journal entry, brought in my balance sheet for 2017, started 2018 completely fresh and new from zero, just because it was so bad. The QuickBooks desktop file was so bad that converting would have been a mess. And that was an enterprise client as well, by the way. Okay, so let's talk about some common areas of concern post-conversion, which I think these are the things that should bring flags right away if during the conversation any of these things come up. One is there any sort of beyond basic inventory management, assemblies, back orders? That should bring a red flag that QuickBooks Online won't do that well. Job costing reports, anything with payroll job costing, anything with allocating payroll, it won't do it that well either. Custom reports, especially custom summary report. It's been my big cry into it. It's like, hey, we need a custom summary report. It's such a basic thing that we need, and it's such a powerful thing in QuickBooks Desktop. Any customized workflows, specifically with sales orders and custom fields. I see clients using sales orders in so many funky ways to record sales calls, or to record service calls, or to record internal work that they're assigning to each other inside QuickBooks. So you want to check if they're using that because they're going to lose that, right? You want to check if they're losing it or how important that is. Custom fields, are they using custom fields? It's another really important piece, right? You're gonna lose that. You're gonna lose custom fields or any sort of custom reporting with custom fields. Do they have limiting access restrictions to their users, especially with enterprise? You can't really import data with QuickBooks Online. It's a pain. Even Transaction Pro Importer is extremely limited because the third-party tools are limited, and the built-in import tools in QuickBooks Online are horrible. Versus QuickBooks Online, QuickBooks Desktop, especially Accountant Edition, that has add, edit, multiple item list, batch, enter. It's got so many amazing batching and importing tools that if the client is used to importing large lists of items or updating item lists, and you're doing that with desktop quite a bit, it's just not going to be a positive experience with QuickBooks Online, and the third-party apps may not even work. So you may want to check that first. And also, as I mentioned earlier, there's no backup, no restore, no period copy, which means you can't give an IRS auditor, just 1 year or 2 years, no offline access. Like if you happen to be somewhere where every once in a while you have online access, that you have offline access, right? Now let's talk about the delighters or the wins, like at least a few positive things about QuickBooks Online, because I basically spent a whole hour putting down QuickBooks Online. But what does QuickBooks Online do really well? Well, multi-user access is super easy, right? You don't have to buy additional users. It's already there. It's cloud-based. It's platform agnostic. I can tell you most of my successful business owner clients, most of them, Their entire office is PC, but the owner has a Mac. It's almost always, I would say like 99% of the times, everybody has PC, the owner has a Mac. And the owner is such a pain about like using their Mac and stuff like that, that the thought of using a different computer to access QuickBooks or accessing it remotely, it's an issue. So I think that for folks that use a lot of that use Mac, tablets, or smartphones, they tend to love QuickBooks Online because of this. Now, bank feeds, downloaded transactions. I think QuickBooks Online hit it out of the park with bank feeds. I think that the improvement from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online in bank feeds, it's dramatic. It's almost like an entire different team, an entire different company put that together. I'm extremely impressed with QuickBooks Online bank feeds, and I've been for about 2 years. And about 3 years ago, when I was very hesitant to go to QuickBooks Online at all, QuickBooks Online bank feeds is the one that started turning me into the dark side of QuickBooks Online. So I think they do that extremely, extremely well, and that's a huge win, I think, for for some people. Automation of reports, like automatically emailing reports. QuickBooks Desktop doesn't do that too well, even with the new update, not too well. Automation of invoices and sales receipts with built-in payments, automatic payments. QuickBooks Online does that beautifully. You can automate reminders of open invoices, and the integration of a third-party app, it's IT drama free. Like if you know the username and password to stuff, you click 10 things and you integrate super easy. In QuickBooks Desktop, it does require some IT knowledge. So some conclusions. I strongly recommend that you use that master spreadsheet to document everything in your QuickBooks Desktop, all your findings, and use this, copy and paste it into a report, because this is part of what the client paid for. And this is something that this is more of an internal thing. This is how my company does it. We list the services that we are going to include on a fixed fee, limited assessment and conversion service. That's what we call it, limited assessment and conversion service. And we include these 6 things and these 6 things only. This is what we do on the service. We include the analysis of the potential risks where the accounting data wouldn't convert properly. We include the analysis of the functions that you're going to lose in compared to desktop for your particular needs. We're going to give you a list of opportunities where QuickBooks Online can improve or enhance your workflow. We're going to give you the pros and cons of staying, upgrading, downgrading, whatever you want to call it. But we don't make the recommendation. We give them the options. Let the client, that's what we call it, a limited assessment, because the client makes the choice at the end. We'll do a basic conversion. Basically, we'll click on convert and wait until it's done. Give access to the QuickBooks Online file, show it to the client, and not make any entries or adjustments post-conversion. That would be a separate service. And we evaluate QuickBooks Online by looking at reports only. We don't show them transactions or how to use transactions. We just look at the reports, and then from there, the client decides which way to go. We specifically exclude these services, which means that we would charge extra for, right? Condensing the file in QuickBooks Desktop, doing any data entry or catch-up work, journal entries or adjustments, reconciliations, cleaning up discrepancies, inventory adjustments, cleaning up lists, setting up budgets. Obviously, this is a regular accounting work. This is what all QuickBooks consultants do this for a living. This is not included in a limited assessment and conversion services. No training, no setting up a bank feeds, no implementation of third-party apps. This is what you pay for. This is the consulting piece, okay? So you choose what you want to do. You want to hire me for conversion? Okay, we'll do this. You want to hire me for implementation? Well, after I give you the assessment, I will tell you how much I will charge you for the full conversion, which will contain the implementation, which contain some of these items. All right. So we're finished. So anyway, check out Scaling New Heights, June 17th to the 20th is the biggest QuickBooks convention on the East Coast, and check out QuickBooks Connect in November of this year, biggest QuickBooks convention on the West Coast. I want to thank our sponsors again, T-Sheets, #1 rated apps in apps.com. They now were acquired by Intuit, so now they're part of Intuit. So who knows if they're going to be our sponsor past May. We'll see. Aero Workflow, the only workflow manager created by a pro advisor for pro advisors, fully integrated with QuickBooks Online. And HubDoc, the most popular document aggregator for QuickBooks Power users. Download bank statements, receipts, all that stuff with Hotdog and Avalara, our new sponsor, which is sponsoring this episode. Thank you, Avalara, and sponsoring next episode, where we're going to talk about actual Avalara related stuff like sales tax. So we're going to do sales tax, sort tax, and use tax in QuickBooks Desktop, and then we'll have Avalara give us show us how their software works. And that's it. Join the Facebook group. I can't state that enough. Join the Facebook group because you'll get announcements, changes in calendar, all that stuff in the Facebook group. So search QB Power Hour in the Facebook group and Michelle's Successful QuickBooks Consultant LinkedIn group. I hope you have a nice week, and I'll see you in a week. Thank you very much.